All right, we got participants rolling in on a Friday afternoon slash morning, depending on where they're located. So we'll give everybody a couple minutes to jump in. See my buddy Tony from Dellon's on. Always good to see Tony. Everybody, we'll get started here in about 30 more seconds. Just letting some folks to jump in here at the end. Cool. We can see your screen, John.
All right, cool. You want to go ahead and kick us off here?
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for everybody for joining in. We've got a lot of participants and still more rolling in. Appreciate that. Obviously, this is the PlanScan webinar. We do have more webinars coming up, including our lead loader webinar, which is going to start. Hey, the second John Mitchell's on too. Love that. Um, we have our lead loader webinar, which is kind of a really cool new tool that allows you to import from a spreadsheet to create opportunities. So be on the lookout for that on April 5th. And then on May 3rd, we're going to go over our new analytics dashboard, which we're rolling out to individual companies over time here. Some of you already have access to that and some more coming with that. So John, if you go to the next slide, a quick disclaimer about this particular webinar. This is primarily focused on the plumbing industry, right? So this is going to be mainly focused on the guys in AMAR and related to plumbing. There is also an opportunity in the electrical industry. So for those from the electrical industry who were with us in NIMRA a couple weeks ago, this is something we're starting to formulate now. But again, more build out for plumbing and electrical is kind of next, if you will. And we can talk about what those next steps might look like. You can contact me for that. If you're from a different industry, if you're from electronics or food service, what have you, feel free to attend and listen in, but just know that this may not be applicable to you just yet. However, if you're kind of like me, you like to see new technology, understand where AI is going, it might be educational for you. So with that, John, I'll flip it over to you.
Yeah, it sounds good, especially for our electronics reps and even PTRA folks. If you've got regular bills of material that you scan, the same technology will be coming online for that once we teach the model specifically how to do that. So thanks, Scott. So what we're going to talk about today is kind of the origin of this new product that we've come up with called PlanScan, right? And why we did it. Then we're going to talk about how it works and what the process flows are. And then finally, how you can get involved in helping drive this. And this is really RepFabric's first AI-based product, and PlanScan as a standalone company. This can be used across a variety of different quote tools to do the majority of the extraction of information from PDFs that you may have in your day-to-day business. Some of the same technology will be used for a lot of the RepFabric native componentry, and you're going to see how that will be used for even interpreting things like emails in the future to do automatic quotes for you and so on and so forth. So just want to kind of give a quick little preamble what this is about. So one of the things that I think people don't recognize is that there's actually quite a few different types of quoting that you do as an agency or as a manufacturer along the way. And one of the functions that we have, and one of the functions that a lot of people are starting to use, is what we call this quick quote feature. And what that means is if you have stock and flow type of products or shelf good products that have fixed part numbers and not a lot of options or anything else to go with that, it's just regular, tabletop items, specific part numbers or SKUs that are normally just day in, day out, sold through your distributors, to your OEMs, etc. This quick quote feature is something that's super handy, and you have this now. And basically, what it works like is this, and you're going to see how I'm going to contrast this idea of a quick quote versus a project quote where PlanScan really comes into play. So one of the things that you'll see here is you got your rep fabric sidebar. In this case, it's an Outlook. And I'm going to say to myself, hey, here's a new quote. And I'm going to actually prepare this quote. This quote, the system understood who sent me the request for the quote, and I recognize it to be Eaton as my manufacturer who I'm going to create the quote for. And now what I'm doing is I'm basically typing in the part number and choosing the parts and adding the quantities that I plan to use in this quote. As part of this process of adding the part numbers, I can do this both for the part numbers themselves or even look them up by descriptions and some of the parametric searches that go with that and add my part numbers. Now I hit reply, I trigger my add-in, and I say to myself, okay, let's send this quote over to this person. Okay. And when I do that, I mark my quote as having been delivered and I say, hey, here's the quote, Debbie, and thanks, here's my signature, and I'm done. So we call this quoting in a minute. And what you'll notice is that I had things available to me already, which are things like my part numbers and images and so on and so forth of those part numbers that I've preloaded into the manufacturer's or into the rep fabric system, or I've got some sort of link to a manufacturer's parts list that we're able to surface in the same way. So once that's done, what happens is I'm actually producing a quote on a letterhead, again, just this quick quote. And based on that part number or SKU, I can even click on that to get to the specifications of that particular SKU. So this is something you have available today. And if this is something that you want to learn more about and or engage in your system, all you have to do is upload a list of parts. And if you've got customer specific pricing, dealer distributor specific pricing along the way, go ahead. We upload that too. We've got 4 different pricing models. So I suggest that you reach out to us, and support and training will help get this quoting process alive for you for this quick quote thing. So
Yeah, and hey, John, the other thing I'd say here is that there's some pretty good tutorials within our learning management system as well, particularly as you see, if you look at John's screen here, what says Rep Salesforce, this would be your logo, right? So if you want to change your template, have multiple templates, have a template per manufacturer, or even a template for multiple manufacturers, in the learning management system, there's some really good tutorials to show you how to set that up in your own system.
And so, as I mentioned, this is kind of the onesie twosie quotes you might get in your email. Hey, send me a quote for 50 pieces of this particular part, and so on and so forth, right? That's different than what we call project quotes, which is really where PlanScan comes in. And the difference here is that with PlanScan, a lot of our customers we've talked to, and they've told us things like, hey, I wish my company could do the quotes themselves, right? Like others in my company, because I'm the only one with this tribal knowledge on how to do quotes for a specific manufacturer or, specific drawings and so on and so forth. I can't get to all my quotes because the volume is too much, especially for those of you that tend to quote projects as you find them in Dodge Report or Construct Connect, for example. You could quote literally everything in there if you had the capability and the capacity to do that. And we've had our customers say, hey, we're probably only doing 300 quotes a month, but we could be doing 400 to 500 meaningful quotes a month, maybe out of 700 that we could totally quote in our territory. And then we've had other customers say that, hey, I don't have time to look up crosses. This is another area in that if I had extra time to look up the crosses, I might be able to get the crosses on the big high value parts that I know through my tribal knowledge as a quote person, or, but I'm not spending the extra time to do all those lower level crosses that I have available for products on my line card that I want to cross over to from the manufacturer that's called out on the spec. We don't have the quote expertise built yet for this new manufacturer. We don't know the line well enough yet. So that's been another complaint, especially when it comes to folks that are, in complex series options type products like drains and so on and so forth and pumps. And so wouldn't it be nice if you could get that stuff to be out of the box for you? We probably only get to 30% of the quotes we could do, and only probably 30% of those quotes we are able of the parts in those quotes, we in fact actually quote. So in other words, this is someone that's said the same thing to us, is that we don't have enough quote expertise in-house or time to be able to quote everything we want to be able to quote. And of that, we're not quoting everything we could. And so for many of the industries, especially in building and construction, where you have lots of quotes going through, having that capability to quote complex projects is really what you want to do. And if this is kind of the moment that we think about, is that when you have a quote and you've got a price sheet for one manufacturer and a cross sheet on another manufacturer, and you've got just for that one line item, just those manufacturers crosses and pricing for your customers, and you're doing that one by one off of a plan and entering that into a system, you literally need 6 arms and 6 screens to kind of keep that all straight, especially when you go to the next line item, which is a different manufacturer, for crosses, for pricing for this particular customer, and so on and so forth, right? And so it's that moment where many folks have this tribal knowledge in hand, but if you're in 20 different spreadsheets trying to figure things out, this is specifically what PlanScan is designed for what we call project quotes or job quotes along the way. So Scott, I'm going to go ahead and run the first poll.
Yep, let me pull that up here.
Yeah, so what we want to do is try to catalog how you guys do quotes today, and if you do quotes today, and that will help us understand too the list of integrated systems we should be chasing after, and in deeper integrations with very well-known, very popular quote systems that obviously we have a great partnership with, such as ISQuote. So with this, so we're going to give it a couple minutes here. And by far, since this is plumbing directed, it looks like ISQuote's the current winner in the focus of our webinar here today, which is expected.
Although I will say Rep Fabric is trending pretty well too. So.
Yeah. And if you got someone else that we don't currently have, we'd certainly be interested in that knowledge as well to take a look at. So.
And then there's a second question on that quote down there. He had to scroll down to it probably, but that question is, how many quotes per month does your team do where you have to read a fixture schedule?
So the other thing we see is that on average, if you scroll down, there's actually 3 questions in this poll. On average, it looks like most people are spending about 30%, or sorry, 30 minutes to an hour on a specific project quote. And so we're going to try to help shorten that for you here in a minute and show you how.
Oh, by the way, John, I forgot to mention the chat function does not work on here, but the Q&A does. So I know David just threw something in the Q&A. So if you guys have questions as we go or comments, feel free to put that in the Q&A. We'll answer those live or directly to you. So
one of the questions is, hey, a lot of our vendors or our manufacturers that we rep have their own quote system. Well, this capability that you're about to see, actually can front end those quote systems too, to help them. So if you can introduce us to them, we'll certainly make sure that we can simplify their lives and hopefully simplify yours as part of that.
Cool. All right, gonna end the poll now?
Yep, I think so. All right, so let's talk about what this looks like. So imagine you've got a project called the Meridian building that you're going to go out and bid on. It's worth about $100,000 in sales to your company. And the way it works is, for most people, they might get that through a report or a lead, like Dodge Report or Construct Connect. It comes in through email, or they might have a distributor reach out and say, hey, here's a project that we need you to work on. Could you go ahead and work this up and quote it for us? And it's actually a full, plumbing and or electrical schedule of parts for that particular job. In this case, the Meridian building. So the flow is this: basically, you take that email, you take the attachment that has the drawings in it of the project or of the job, and you drop that into PlanScan. PlanScan can then connect to Rep Fabric or your favorite quote tools such as ISQuote. And then eventually, once that gets pulled back in, your salespeople can go out into the wild, and as they go visit accounts such as architects, engineers, distributors and so on and so forth, in a couple of clicks from their mobile, see all those quotes that you prepared for this particular distributor, for example. So as I go through this, this is what it looks like. So imagine where I've got a fixture schedule that I'm going to ingest here. And like I said, this happens to be tuned, our AI models tuned for plumbing at the moment. We're working on electrical. We'll soon be working on bill of material reading for folks in other markets where they sell more to OEMs. And this is how it works. What you do is you paint your grid around the parts that you care about, okay? And as part of that, when you submit it, what happens is PlanScan's starting to read it as if a human being would read it, and it pulls out of that all of the matches that you've got between what is in the plan and what you carry on your line card for part numbers that are in the plan. Additionally, what you'll notice is it's also crossing things. So it's saying, hey, we see American Standard on the plan, but we're actually going to cross that over to our other line, ZERN. And so these crosses can then be saved, or you can go in and actually edit things right here in the process here, where I can say, hey, let me go ahead and add extra words, characters, etc., that may not be currently listed from what the OCR extracted. Okay. At that point, we hit submit, and that submits it to the quote tool. This is the example of RepFabric's quote tool, where what it's done is it's basically received all that information. It's applied the pricing to those parts, and it's basically gotten those parts to create a master quote in RepFabric that you can then clone for that particular distributor, for example. So we're going to clone this for A Supply. During this clone process, it's actually going to apply A Supply's multipliers and discounts and so on and so forth, and create that final quote for you, which can then be shown here. So you'll notice that the multipliers are applied across the board here, and the unit prices are updated along the way. So at this point, I can generate the PDF just like the one we saw coming out of Outlook, and I can download that, or I can just fire it from email right from there. So, if you have an existing great quote system such as ISQuote today, no problem. We're not necessarily trying to replace that with what we're doing here, but this is just showing you how an integration to such as the RepFabric quote tool would work, and it works similarly in ISQuote, which we're gonna show you in just a minute. So the other thing I want to show you is that as you drag and drop these things in here, it may not just be for one schedule in the plan, okay? And so I'm going to beef up this schedule, but what you'll notice now is I'm going to, actually, sorry, this is the second plan here. What I'm looking at here is the schedule, and I'm going to paint my grid around multiple schedules as part of the process. So I'm going to drag and drop it in. I'm going to turn my view of this particular plan sideways. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to recognize the marks. I'm going to recognize all the manufacturers, and I'm going to look for not only the plumbing fixture schedule, but in this case, the pump schedule, as well as the water heater schedule. And again, the OCR will extract this to take what often becomes tired eyes of your quote, folks doing takeoffs, and just kind of gets rid of that process for them. So I submit this, and basically what we see now is it runs through the process of reading the whole document. And when it comes back from this process of reading this document, it's going to extract every manufacturer and part number that it can find along the way, and also cross it over to your line card. So as you can see here, here's the list of parts on the left side that match. And again, you can make edits for things like crosses. Sometimes you want to save those crosses. Sometimes you just have some tribal knowledge that it needs some extra dashes and so on and so forth. And so this allows you to create and build up your cross database along the way. So at this point, I went ahead and submitted that same quote, and the same idea is true here. So now I click on this particular quote. Again, this kind of went into the RepFabric side, and you can see like here's all those parts that we pulled across and priced accordingly to what we had hoped for. And so we've had customers that have said, hey, things that quotes that used to take us an hour take us about 3 minutes now with this. And so that's basically how this whole thing works. So the next flow that we often see is, now that, or let me put it this way, now that we got this already quoted up, how do you operationalize this with your sales folks out in the wild, right? Because we've also heard from our customers that, hey, we have a hard time making sure that our quotes are followed up on because, yeah, we're going to quote 300 jobs a month, but only, we're only going to win X percentage of them because our salespeople, if they could do a better job following up on those quotes, they would. So what this allows you to do is let me just start this over. It says, okay, I'm going into this particular company. And when I do that, I hit my more button and I go over to my quote tab, that Q. And then inside this quote tab, this is where you can find the quotes that are associated with this particular items and listings that go with that, emails associated with the quotes, which aren't shown in this part, but emails are part of it, as well as the quote attachment. And with the IS quote integration today, for example, the IS quote attachment is also surfaced here. And of course, the Rep Fabric one is as well if you use the Rep Fabric quote tool. So this is how you follow it up. And at this point, your person can go into a specific quote and they can use the voice dictation function. They can change the status. They can mark the win losses and so on and so forth to give you quote analytics on your hit rates along the way. And so in this case, I'm just saying, hey, here's what they said about this particular quote. Pricing looks good. They're going to send an order over next week. And, but these parts of it did not look good. So is there anything we can do to tighten that up? That also notifies your watchers, right? So that people on the team who are used to working on this quote with this customer are going to see all those comments right there on the quote, right from the field, right there in the moment from your salesperson who's talking to that customer so that you can take some action and win more business. So that's the reason why. And it's one thing to use PlanScan to to make the quoting easier and faster, but you want to have an institutionalized business process with your salespeople to be following up on the quotes that you produce, and as long as you're investing that time to produce those quotes to begin with. So what happens is what we're going to look at now is since many of you folks are on the plumbing side, and obviously we've got our good partners and good friends at IS Quote. Here's an example of another flow that's similar, where what we're doing in this case is we're basically taking construction leads and we're loading them into jobs in Rep Fabric, the jobs module. And then as those jobs start to get quoted, you can drop in the PlanScan piece here, which then fires over into IS Quote. Now, it's not a live integration yet. It's an import process off of the CSVs, and they've been greatly improving that import process along the way. And hopefully we'll be turning it into full API connections like you saw with Rep Fabric here. So basically, this is what happens is now that I prepare that quote in IS Quote, and I filter it and I groom it and I choose all my series options and so on and so forth, then that quote actually integrates into Rep Fabric so that you can kick off the same follow-up. And IS Quote is, of course, going to email that quote over to your, to your distributors. So at this point, your salespeople now have the same information, just like we saw. And with IS Quote's expertise in the tooling and the plumbing market specifically, it really forms a fully integrated total package here. So what that looks like is basically this. So in addition to doing my scans like I would show you, that's going to drop a file that looks like this. So it's carrying the marks and the location. It's going to carry the manufacturers that come aboard and the model numbers of those manufacturers and any cross references that you have on your side. So what you do is you go into IS Quote and you prep a quote and you basically say, here's those line items that we're going to quote as part of this. And that in turn takes us into the import process here, where I'm going to pull these parts in. And as part of the importing the quote, what we're doing is copying and pasting that information out of the Excel file. And it's going to basically take each of those pieces and then match it to the IS Quote information in the system. And as part of that, now it's going to basically build out those part numbers where you're selecting those columns and then add those into the IS quote itself for the quantities and so on that we pulled from the product. And if part numbers aren't found, this is one of the things they've been enhancing. It's going to be doing more with the pop-ups of series options, and if part numbers aren't found, being able to select a part number that's a very close similar match, or maybe PlanScan read it wrong or something like that. So that's what we're doing. And today we're over 500 recognized manufacturers. The majority of those are in plumbing, but we're also spinning up the electrical side. at the moment pretty heavily. The part numbers are not necessary for recognition, meaning that part numbers for your lines, we don't necessarily have to have a list, but it helps improve our accuracy if we do have a list of part numbers from your manufacturers. We've been looking for online sources where we can basically get a whole list of part numbers for your line card. But if your manufacturers are giving you their parts lists and so on and so forth, we would want to load that into the back end of PlanScan for you. And all it does is really increase accuracy of the extraction from the PDF. And right now we're doing that for about 65,000 part numbers that are very well recognized. Now, the cool thing about this being machine learning and AI based is it's getting smarter and better. So even in the course of 3 months, we probably run, several thousand plans through this again, and it just keeps getting better and better and more accurate with the tuning that our team is doing.
Hey,
Um,
John.
yeah.
So we had a question, and I know we love talking about drains, right? So Dennis asked the question, how does it handle options for things like drains when importing into IS Quote?
So what happens is now IS Quote's release that's coming out, I think this week, or maybe it came out last week. What's going to happen is when you import that, if it's a line item that has a series option, upon the import, it will give you a pop-up to let you choose the rest of the series options along the way.
Okay, cool.
So
Thanks.
not I know that they're working on a release on their side too. So one of the things I wanted to mention was crosses. So there's really a couple different choices here on crosses. One is you can build up your own cross list. So if you've got a cross list from your manufacturer or one that you guys have done for your own company over the course of years and having built that up, you can go ahead and do that. You can build it as you go, meaning that you can type in your crosses as you see parts come across the scan. You can build up your crosses over there and save them. And like I said, they're also uploadable from a CSV along the way. So I can upload my thing. Last but not least, we're working on and kind of working towards crowdsourcing a big chunk of the crosses list where one of our customers is able to validate these crosses for us. And if you crowdsource or want the crowdsourced cross list, basically it's still up to you to verify it. But we would also ask that you would volunteer any of those verifications back to the crowdsourcing to make it more and more accurate over time. And receiving crosses into your line card in return is basically what you'll get. So you're not. So let's talk about this for a minute. It's a
So like
one-way. Go ahead.
I could see this being hugely helpful if, I don't know, let's say for instance, you used to be the American Standard rep and now you're the Zern rep, right? And so converting from American Standard over to Zern, right, is where that kind of rep would do this. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. So let's pretend that you're the Zern rep and you receive a scan that has a Watts, a Watts drain on it, for example, and you want to convert that to Zern. Well, that's cool, but as the Zern rep, if you submit your crosses to the crowdsource, it's not going to send it back the other way to say anytime we see Zern, cross it to Watts, because you will have kept your cross of the Watts information on your side as your IP. But if nobody volunteers the Zern to Watts cross backwards, we're not gonna do it the other way. So okay, so at this point, go ahead.
All right. So our second poll.
And one of the questions that came up is, does the maximum number of item codes slow down the system, or is the maximum number of part numbers that can be put in? So we actually run most of the part numbers in memory. So we want to keep it groomed towards the part numbers associated with your particular line card where possible, with exception of the crosses, which can be much bigger. So there is an upper limit. So we want to have 10 million part numbers because we would have to host that, which would cost a ton of money in memory that probably wouldn't make your monthly fee worth it. But alternatively, we keep it distilled down to the parts you care about, and that we can most definitely do. So,
All right, we got some answers coming in right now, John.
so we're running this second poll, and this is more about how you do quoting and how much you cross today. Okay, and as part of that, this is where, you know, like we said before, what percentage of parts on a quote do you typically cross for your lines? And it looks like about half, or basically the majority is less than half or less overall. Some people do a little bit more than that. The
Mhm.
second question, if you were to scroll down, would be what percentage of parts could you cross if you had more time? And most people are 50% or more if if we had more time. So that's part of what PlanScan is trying to help you do is you focus on the big crosses and the complex stuff like the, you know, the drains and the pumps, or you know, in the case of LED lighting, specific fixtures that maybe have cosmetic stuff versus you know, other more standard parts, shelf good parts. And you know, this is what PlanScan is really designed to help you do. So I think, Scott, we're good to go on the poll.
All right.
All right. And then last but not least, how do you learn it? You learn it by going through about a 20-minute tutorial. And this is really what our startup process looks like. So we're going to talk about pricing here in a minute. And Scott, you can do that. We're going to receive and accept the quotation. We're going to send your line card to us, or we can extract that if it's a rep fabric connection only, and manufacturer's part list to support at PlanScan. That cross list, if you've got one, you can send that over as well. We'll load up the back end for your specific instance of PlanScan. And at that point, you'll take about 20 minutes of training because it's pretty straightforward how it works. It's a lot, frankly, a lot simpler than all the things that Rep Fabric does. It's more of a utility. And, you know, basically, if you're using Rep Fabric, we'll help you load parts and pricing along the way. And of course, you'll have to take the training courses and so on and so forth. But the biggest thing is no matter what quote system you use on the Rep Fabric side, make sure that your outside salespeople and your inside salespeople know where to go and how to follow up on those quotes so that you can increase your hit rate. So with that, Scott, you want to take over?
Yeah, so basically what we're doing is we're offering a trial period, whereas you can participate with us, and we've got about half a dozen people already taking advantage of this, but it's $200 per month per user for the first 3 months. And we're going to do a poll here just to see if that's something that you would be interested in doing. As I mentioned before, we currently have plumbing pretty well built out. Electrical is underway right now. You see, it says electrical to follow in February. It's underway now. And with that, we'll probably jump over to, oh, by the way, future markets coming, HVAC, roofing, et cetera. So this kind of workflow is something that, you know, back when I was doing electrical takeoffs on schedules, I was doing myself, you know, 20 some odd years ago. And the fact to have a system do it for you is really exciting. So with that, I think the next one is the poll, John. Not sure.
I think so too. Yep.
All right. Yeah, poll. Cool. Thank you. So with that, let me go back and go to our third poll. And it's a one question poll this time. So pretty quick. Just would you or would you not like to have us reach out to you? And if so, if you could send me an email and I will provide you a quotation for that. So,
Awesome. All right, guys. So we're going to take a couple Q&A questions here. So I think Jeff asked a question about the first feature is showed where you can do a quote right from Outlook for one or two items. If that's related to the series options thing, that's not something that RepFabric's quote tool can do today. And so I think that's the question you were answering, Jeff. I'm not exactly sure. But that quote right from Outlook for your shelf goods, your stock parts, and so on and so forth, that's ready to go. Just load up your parts list in Rep Fabric, load up your customer pricing in Rep Fabric, and there's tutorials for that, or you can jump on our 4:30 daily call to get some live support with how to get through that process. So if you go into your Rep Fabric system, click on the help button and say daily 4:30 call, or you'll see that as a drop down. Go ahead and jump on that, and then we'll walk you through what that process looks like, and we can help you with that along the way. Another question was, how does this function if a manufacturer and catalog are all in the same column, and there are multiple manufacturers and catalog numbers in that cell? So that's usually a data extraction problem. We'd have to see the specific file format for that. If you can go back to your manufacturer and say, hey, can you give me a clean list of parts? And by the way, if you can give me a URL to a spec sheet or a URL to a thumbnail, we'll use that too. Try to do that first. Otherwise, that sounds like an extraction plan, and it's really specific to the exact format of what's in there. One of the things that we've been working on quite a bit internally at the rep fabric side of the house is using generative AI to extract that data. And you'll start to see that in sales and commission imports and order imports and so on and so forth in the very near future, where it doesn't matter what that cell looks like, we'll pull those parts out. So that's what that one is. Scott, do you want to ask these and I'll
Yeah, for sure. So next question is, do you have to build the cross sheet in order for the system to cross? For example, if a Delta rep in a part of the country has sent this in, is this already loaded in and can it be crossed? So I think this is kind of the idea of crowdsourcing versus owning your own crosses a little bit here.
right. So first things first, disclaimer, PlanScan is a utility, so we opt out of any responsibility for the accuracy of those crosses because we just have to, because some people cross with a little more leniency than others, let's say. But the answer is yes. If the Delta reps as a group gave us their crosses, we could distill that down so that all Delta reps would have those crosses available to them in their system today. So that's how we do it. And we typically would want to do that on a manufacturer by manufacturer basis. And, we're ready to go as far as that goes. So yes, that's having built-in crosses so you can quote more is certainly something that we're ready to go with.
All right. This one is, will there be a symbol counter option implemented in the future? Not really sure exactly what it means.
Actually, we've run across a company that does do that. So we've been talking to them about an integration where when you have, for example, especially on the electrical side, you have a plan that's got lots of symbols for every light switch, every wall outlet, every troffer light, etc. They actually count those symbols. And what we've been talking to them about doing is have them do that symbol counting and then us do the extraction of the part numbers. And at that point, we'll have quantities and part numbers that we can then pump into the quote tool downstream. One of the other things, if you are in the electrical market, is we've been talking, and you're an Oasis user, we've been talking to those guys, and they've given us their OData formats that we might be able to use PlanScan to front-end Oasis on that as well. So that's kind of an exciting development area. First of all, we're just trying to get our accuracy way up on the extraction in the electrical market, which requires a whole bunch of part numbers, a whole bunch of manufacturers listed in that market, and that's what we'll be able to do. So,
Dennis asked, would future iterations of this allow an upload and scan of the entire plan looking for specific items? A lot of time there's human error because the quote person doesn't look at the water heater detail where there's expansion tanks, leak detection, etc. They just go to the fixture schedule.
yes. So having the more detailed descriptions as part of that and eventually surfacing those descriptions within the plans is certainly on a roadmap. To be honest, we're trying to get the basic stuff done, and accurate. And then we're going to take it to that next level where, in a sense, like reading and interpreting the series options, that we can surface that information to you eventually, so that you can make the right series options choices in your quote tool.
Awesome. Question is, will there be someone available to help our commercial team implement and get comfortable using this tool? I'm the
Yes.
administrator for Rep Fabric for the company, and our rep is a key partner in solving any problems we run into. And he keeps giving credit to the Rep Fabric team of helping them so far, and wondering if there's going to be that same kind of support for PlanScan.
Yep. So yes, same idea. It's actually a separate team, and the team would be responsible for doing all of the onboarding of your parts and processes and so on and so forth related to PlanScan for the extraction and crosses. When it comes to the quote tools, if you're going to use the Rep Fabric quote tool, all that stuff would be on the Rep Fabric support side. But you'll have hand-on coaching, especially as our early users, we're trying to get more and more feedback on which part of the schedule is extracted correctly. If there was some issue, what was that about? Tell us more while we're kind of developing this. But in general, I mean, it's working really, really well now, even since when we first launched this back in December of last year. the recognition improvements are markedly huge and getting more and more accurate. So uh, we think we're doing pretty well there. So the answer is yes. It's going to be a high touch thing. It's not going to be a hey, stick your credit card in a website and fill it out and good luck to you. It's a high touch thing.
Yeah, and that's really part of the kind of the strategy here is the reason why the pricing is such is that we want to get people into the community and get this thing built up because as John mentioned, it's machine learning. So the more people we have touching it and using it, the better the whole system gets, and the better we get as a company, and the better tool gets for you as a user. So kind of like Rep Fabric, it's all about the community, and the more people that are in a community, the better the community is.
Yeah. And the other part to this is the more we can connect it. So some of the roadmap stuff that we're working on here would be things like your groomed crosses database with options, some of the speed improvements. So we've been working on the scalability of it to make it go from, taking a big file that maybe takes 3 minutes to scan and trying to break that down into 30, 40 seconds total. Usability improvements, of course, just, hey, what other clicks seem unnecessary and how do we make those go away? Then eventually we want to do integrations, including integrations right into the Outlook sidebar in Rep Fabric that drops it in automatically into the PlanScan engine. And same with the Gmail side. Obviously with ISQuote, we want a live API integration, same with Eclipse and other quote tools that are out there, Oasis. And then of course, if we can even get things like inventory availability that you might have in your warehouse, that would kind of close the loop on pricing and availability and quotes that you develop, and that can be pretty compelling as well. So one of the other webinars that we're going to have coming up in the near future is actually Rep Fabric standalone's AI capabilities and what's sort of in the labs and what we're working on for you guys, as well as our new next generation model. I'm just going to give you guys a little taste of what that is going to look like. But this is, a new model of our next generation app that's well underway for development. And part of what we've done just as a company as Rep Fabric is really shifted our technology to be AI first. So we've kind of changed a lot of how our database works. The underlying technology is part of that, and building up our next generation to be AI first. And a lot of the PlanScan things that you're seeing here are going to be, basically woven into all different aspects of Rep Fabric, from answering your email to ingesting, quotes and orders automatically, to ingesting sales and commission statements automatically, and having the system recognize companies, part numbers, and so on and so forth. So it just takes a lot of transactional work out. And so this is really kind of where we're heading. So certainly keep you posted on those webinars on the AI stuff, but it's coming. So I'm pretty excited about it because I think it's going to help us all stay focused on revenue generating activities and a lot less of just, kind of the minutia of the business or the troublesome paperwork of the business. So thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for spending your Friday afternoon or late morning with us. And if you did not get a chance to answer the poll, feel free to send me a note if you want to learn more about PlanScan. Just scott.stockham@repfabric.com, and we'll get you hooked up.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Thank
day.
you. Take care. Have a great weekend.